Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Dust motes floated, suspended in rays of afternoon sun, casting an ethereal glow on the antique furniture. The recent upheaval of moving was nearly complete, evidenced by a final box landing noiselessly. A quiet sigh accompanied the wiping of sweat from a weary brow. A measured, dignified voice broke the silence, echoing through the halls. "Is this the final crate?" "Indeed, all done," was the subdued reply, a veil of the speaker's inner turmoil. An elegant, elderly figure filled the doorframe. Eleanor Blackwood exuded a timeless dignity, her presence commanding despite her advanced years. She scrutinized her grandson, his attire a contrast to her poise, with oversized clothing concealing any semblance of youthful vigor.
"The expectation is you settle in promptly, and for heaven's sake, wash up. You look positively feral."
As the clicking of Eleanor's sensible heels faded down the hallway, Dawson Harmon released a heavy sigh. At 23, he'd never imagined living with his grandmother, a woman who'd always regarded him with thinly veiled disappointment. But when the drunk driver had taken both his parents 3 weeks ago, options had evaporated quickly. The small town of Mapleton offered few rental opportunities, and his administrative job at the local community college barely covered his student loans. His grandmother's offer, no, command, to move into her sprawling Victorian home had been his only choice. Dawson ran fingers through his shaggy brown hair and surveyed the room. It was suffocatingly proper. Floral wallpaper, heavy wooden furniture, and a single bed with a handmade quilt. Nothing like his apartment in the city with its mismatched furniture and walls covered in concert posters. The next 2 weeks settled into an uncomfortable rhythm. Eleanor's displeasure with everything from Dawson's posture to his table manners became a constant background noise to his grief. His grandmother's house operated on strict schedules and stricter rules. Shoes off at the door, no electronics at the dinner table, dishes washed immediately after meals, clothes properly hung, never draped over furniture. "You slouch like a wilting plant," she would say during dinner. "Sit up straight, elbows off the table." One particularly dreary Saturday afternoon, with rain pattering against the windows, Dawson found himself exploring the vast attic. Eleanor had mentioned family photo albums somewhere in the dusty space, and he hoped to find pictures of his father as a young man, something to hold on to as memories began fading at the edges. The attic was a treasure trove of generations past. Steamer trunks, hat boxes, and furniture draped in yellowed sheets filled the space. As he opened an antique wardrobe, a flash of color caught his eye. Vibrant fabric among mothballs and cedar. Carefully, he pulled out a floral print tea dress with delicate lace trim. The garment was surprisingly well preserved, the fabric still soft despite its age. It reminded him of something from an old film, the kind Eleanor watched on her antique television set. Without thinking, Dawson held the dress against himself, turning toward a tarnished, full-length mirror propped against the wall. The dress would fit. Something about the soft fabric against his t-shirt felt comforting in a way he couldn't articulate. A momentary impulse overtook him. The house was quiet. Eleanor had gone to her garden club meeting and wouldn't return for hours. With hesitant movements, Dawson slipped off his t-shirt and jeans. The dress slid over his head easily, the fabric settling against his skin with surprising rightness. In the mirror stood someone different, not quite himself, but not a stranger either. The brown-haired figure looking back had softer edges somehow. The dress nipped in at a waist he didn't realize he had, flaring over narrow hips. For the first time since the funeral, Dawson felt a strange peace settle over him. The creaking of the attic stairs shattered the moment. "Dawson? Are you up here? The meeting was canceled due to—" Eleanor froze at the top of the stairs, her eyes widening at the sight before her. Dawson's face burned with shame as he tried to form words, explanations, excuses, but nothing came out. For several excruciating moments, his grandmother said nothing. Then, unexpectedly, her expression shifted from shock to something unreadable. "I see." Her voice was measured, contemplative. "That was your great-aunt Margaret's dress. She wore it to a garden party in 1956. Dawson scrambled to remove the garment. "I'm sorry, I was just—" "Stop." Eleanor raised her hand. "Don't tear the fabric. It's delicate." She approached slowly, circling Dawson with an appraising eye. "Actually, it suits you better than those dreadful baggy clothes you insist on wearing. Your frame is quite similar to Margaret's. Narrow shoulders, small waist." Confusion replaced embarrassment as Dawson stood frozen in place. This wasn't the reaction he'd expected. Not anger or disgust, but assessment? "Grandma, I can explain." "No need." Eleanor adjusted the collar of the dress with practiced hands.
"I've watched you these past weeks, Dawson. You're lost, directionless, no structure, no purpose." She stepped back, nodding slightly. "Perhaps this is the answer we've both been looking for." "The answer?" Dawson's voice cracked. "I've always wanted a granddaughter to pass my knowledge to. Someone to teach proper etiquette, to understand the importance of appearance and decorum." She gestured to the dress. "This might be exactly what you need. Structure, discipline, reinvention." Before Dawson could process her words, Eleanor was rummaging through nearby boxes, pulling out white stockings and a pair of worn but elegant low-heeled shoes. "These should complete the ensemble for now," she said, placing them at Dawson's feet. "We'll need to work on your posture and mannerisms, of course." "You want me to dress like this? Regularly?" The question came out barely above a whisper. Eleanor's eyes softened slightly. The first genuine softening Dawson had seen since arriving. "I think we both know you didn't put that dress on out of mere curiosity." She reached out, gently tucking a strand of brown hair behind his ear. "Sometimes the universe provides unexpected paths forward. This could be yours." That evening, dinner featured a third participant. Not quite Dawson, not yet someone else. Seated at the antique mahogany table in the floral print dress, white stockings, and low heels, Dawson picked at roast chicken while Eleanor offered corrections. "Smaller bites. A lady never rushes through her meal. Keep your knees together when seated. The napkin goes in your lap immediately after sitting." Each instruction was delivered with authoritative certainty, not cruelty. For the first time, Eleanor seemed genuinely engaged, almost energized. Later, as Dawson stood before the bathroom mirror removing the outfit, Eleanor appeared in the doorway. "Mary," she said suddenly. "What?" "Mary. It was my mother's name. Strong but feminine. It suits you better than Dawson, don't you think?" Before he could respond, she continued. "We'll start properly tomorrow. Sleep well, Mary." As she closed the door, Dawson, or was it Mary now, stared at the reflection in the mirror. The name echoed in his mind. Mary. Not a name he would have chosen, but hearing it spoken aloud stirred something unexplainable inside. The next morning,
Dawson found the bedroom door locked from the outside. A note had been slipped underneath. Mary's clothes are laid out in the guest bathroom. Breakfast at 7:30 sharp. In the bathroom, a pale yellow sundress hung on the back of the door. Next to it, a shopping bag contained essential feminine undergarments, still with tags attached. Eleanor must have ordered them online overnight. For several minutes, Dawson stared at the items, considering options. He could refuse, could demand his regular clothes, could pack up and leave, though the practical impossibility of that option weighed heavy. Instead, slowly, methodically, she put on each item as if assembling a new identity. The dress fit surprisingly well, emphasizing a naturally slim waist. Downstairs, Eleanor waited at the dining table, teacup poised midair as Mary entered. A slight nod of approval preceded instructions. Shorter steps. Let your hips lead the way. Hands at your sides. Never in pockets. The following days blurred into weeks as Eleanor's curriculum expanded. Proper application of makeup, how to style growing hair, the correct way to sit, stand, enter a room, vocal exercises to soften the lower registers. Eleanor proved a demanding but patient teacher, correcting with demonstration rather than criticism. The key to femininity is mindfulness, she explained, while demonstrating how to properly pour tea. Every movement has purpose and grace. Mary absorbed the lessons with surprising aptitude. The initial awkwardness gave way to a fluid grace that even Eleanor had to admire. The brown hair, now free from restrictive styling products, began to soften around the face, showing natural waves previously hidden. "You have your mother's profile," Eleanor commented one evening as she trimmed the gradually lengthening brown locks. "Though your eyes, those are definitely from your father's side." When Mary's wardrobe expanded, it followed Eleanor's classic sensibilities: A-line dresses in pastel colors, cardigans for chilly evenings, sensible but elegant shoes. A powder blue silk dress became Eleanor's favorite. "That blue brings out flecks in your eyes I never noticed before," she said during Mary's first appearance in the garment. "We'll need to find more in that shade." 2 months into the transformation, Mary realized her old clothing had disappeared entirely. The closet now contained only dresses, skirts, blouses, all in Eleanor's approved styles. A pointed question about the missing items received an equally pointed response. "Those rags weren't suitable for anyone, let alone a proper young lady. I've donated them to those who might need them." The statement made clear there would be no returning to Dawson's former appearance. More surprisingly, Mary found the prospect didn't trouble her as expected. Each day in feminine attire felt increasingly natural. Each new skill mastered a small victory. One morning, Eleanor announced they would be venturing outside the house together for the first time. "We need proper shoes for you. Your feet are narrower than I expected. Custom sizing will be necessary." Fear flickered across Mary's face. "But people will see a grandmother and her granddaughter shopping," Eleanor interrupted firmly. "You pass quite convincingly now, especially with your hair growing out so nicely." The brown locks had indeed grown, now brushing past the collar and styled in a feminine bob that framed Mary's increasingly confident face. "But what if someone recognizes me?" The worry was legitimate. Mapleton was small, and Dawson had lived there his entire life before college. Eleanor waved away the concern. "You've been inside for months. Your appearance has changed dramatically. Anyone who might remember Dawson will see only what they expect to see, a young woman accompanying her grandmother." The shopping trip proved Eleanor right. Sales associates addressed them as ladies without hesitation. When they encountered Dr. Preston, a longtime friend of Eleanor's, introductions flowed naturally. "Margaret, wonderful to see you. And who is this lovely young lady?" "My granddaughter, Mary. She's come to live with me after her parents' passing." No recognition flickered in the doctor's eyes as she expressed condolences and commented on the family resemblance she imagined she saw. That evening, seated before the vanity mirror Eleanor had installed in her room, Mary studied her reflection as she removed makeup with practiced motions. The person looking back bore little resemblance to Dawson. Softer features, more expressive eyes, graceful movements that had become second nature. "Do you know what today was?" Eleanor appeared in the doorway, a small gift box in hand. Mary shook her head. "It's been exactly 100 days since we began your transformation. I thought this milestone deserved recognition." Inside the box lay a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant, the letter M in flowing script. "It was mine when I was your age. My husband gave it to me when we became engaged." Something wistful crossed Eleanor's features. "I never had a daughter to pass it to." As Eleanor fastened the necklace around her neck, Mary felt tears threatening. "Thank you," she whispered, touching the pendant gently. "You've exceeded my expectations," Eleanor admitted. "You've taken to this life with a natural grace I couldn't have anticipated." For the first time, Mary considered the full implications of what had transpired over these months. What had begun as an impulsive moment in an attic had evolved into a complete transformation, internal as much as external. The grief that had consumed Dawson seemed to have lifted from Mary, not gone, but transmuted into something manageable. As the seasons changed, so too did Mary's confidence. By winter, she had mastered the art of cold-weather femininity, elegant wool coats, scarves draped just so, leather gloves that Eleanor insisted completed any proper winter ensemble. A more significant test came when Eleanor announced they would attend the annual Christmas concert at the town hall. "It's time you were properly introduced to society," she declared, adjusting Mary's forest green velvet dress. "You've been hidden away too long." The prospect of facing the entire town en masse sent anxiety coursing through Mary's system. "What if someone remembers?" Eleanor's assurance was practical, as always. Dawson left for college 5 years ago and rarely returned. Most people barely recall what he looked like. You're a different person now, and most importantly, you believe it yourself. The night of the concert, Mary descended the stairs in the green velvet dress, brown hair now falling past her shoulders in soft waves, minimal makeup enhancing rather than masking her features. Eleanor's approving nod contained genuine pride. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." The town hall glittered with holiday decorations as they entered. Mary kept close to Eleanor, heart pounding as old acquaintances approached. Each introduction followed the same pattern, Eleanor presenting her granddaughter Mary, who had come to live with her following tragic circumstances. Sympathy rather than suspicion colored each interaction. No one questioned the narrative. Instead, they welcomed the newcomer, commenting on her poise and how lucky Eleanor was to have family close by in her advancing years. Only once did Mary freeze. When Professor Williams, her former academic advisor, approached. If anyone would recognize Dawson beneath Mary's careful presentation, surely it would be him. "Eleanor, wonderful to see you out and about." His gaze turned to Mary with polite interest.
"And who might this be?" "My granddaughter, Mary. She's living with me now.
Professor Williams extended his hand.
Lovely to meet you, Mary. I knew your father when he was a student. Brilliant man.
No recognition. Not even a flicker of doubt crossed his features as he chatted about the music program before excusing himself to find his wife.
See?
Eleanor whispered as he walked away. The person they knew no longer exists. You're free to be who you truly are now. The realization settled over Mary like a comfortable blanket. Dawson, with his uncertainty, his grief, his disconnect from the world, had been set aside. In his place stood someone with purpose, someone who navigated social situations with growing confidence. By spring, Mary had begun venturing out alone. Small errands at first, picking up Eleanor's prescriptions, grocery shopping, returning books to the library. Each successful outing built confidence that solidified her new identity. When Eleanor suggested Mary might consider employment, it seemed a natural progression. The Historical Society needs an administrative assistant. Mrs. Henderson mentioned it at our last garden club meeting. Eleanor sipped her tea thoughtfully. The hours are reasonable, and the environment would be suitable for someone of your refined sensibilities. The interview process proved remarkably straightforward. Eleanor's recommendation carried significant weight, and Mary's naturally organized mind, a trait that had served Dawson well in academic settings, impressed the board members.
We'd be delighted to have you join our team, Miss Blackwood,
the director announced at the conclusion of the interview. The name gave Mary pause. She hadn't considered that Eleanor had effectively given her the family surname as well. Further evidence that Dawson Harmon had been completely replaced. Working at the Historical Society introduced Mary to a wider social circle. Most colleagues were older women who took her under their wing, offering advice on everything from local politics to dating etiquette. The latter always made Mary blush and deflect, though not out of discomfort with the subject itself.
You're such a pretty young thing,
Mrs. Davidson from the archives often said. You shouldn't hide away with us old ladies forever. Mary would smile politely and change the subject. The prospect of dating hadn't entered her considerations. The complexities it would introduce seemed overwhelming. As Mary's first full year in her new identity approached, Eleanor's health began to decline. Nothing dramatic, small concerns that accumulated gradually, forgetfulness, fatigue, occasional confusion about dates or times.
I'm perfectly fine,
Eleanor insisted when Mary suggested a doctor's visit.
Just the natural consequences of age.
But Mary persisted, eventually convincing her grandmother to undergo a thorough examination. The diagnosis, early-stage vascular dementia, arrived with both clarity and dread. The progression can be slowed with medication and lifestyle adjustments, the doctor explained gently. But you should prepare for gradual changes. The roles reversed subtly after the diagnosis. Mary began managing medication schedules, taking over bill payments, ensuring the house remained maintained. Eleanor's occasional confusion sometimes extended to Mary's identity, moments when she would refer to Dawson before correcting herself with visible frustration.
I'm sorry, Mary,
she would say after such episodes. My mind plays tricks on me. Mary would squeeze her hand reassuringly. It's all right, Grandma. I'm still me, regardless of what you call me. These slips never occurred in public, only in private moments when Eleanor's guard lowered. Outside observers saw only a devoted granddaughter caring for an aging relative, exactly as Eleanor had orchestrated. By Mary's 25th birthday, marked according to Dawson's original birth date, the transformation had become so complete that even Mary rarely thought of her previous identity. The brown hair now cascaded past her shoulder blades. Her movements carried natural feminine grace, and her voice had settled into higher registers through consistent practice. To celebrate the milestone, Eleanor insisted on hosting a small dinner party, inviting the Historical Society staff and a few of her own longtime friends. "It's time we properly acknowledged your place in this community," she declared while reviewing the guest list. "No more hiding in the shadows." The evening of the party, Mary wore the powder blue silk dress that had become something of a signature piece. Eleanor, dressed in her finest purple ensemble despite her declining health, beamed with unmistakable pride as guests arrived. During dinner, Eleanor tapped her glass for attention. Despite her condition, she remained regal and composed when she chose to be. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate Mary's birthday." Her gaze swept the table before settling on her granddaughter.
Few of you know the full story of how Mary came to live with me. After losing her parents, my son and daughter-in-law, Mary arrived at my doorstep lost and broken. Mary tensed slightly, uncertain where this speech was heading. "What I found," Eleanor continued, "was not just family to care for in my later years, but a kindred spirit. Someone who understood the importance of tradition, proper behavior, and personal reinvention." Her eyes glistened slightly. "In these past 2 years, I've watched Mary become the woman she was always meant to be. I couldn't be prouder to introduce her to all of you not just as my granddaughter, but as my successor in upholding the Blackwood family legacy." Glasses raised around the table as guests offered congratulations and warm smiles. No one questioned the narrative. No one saw anything but what Eleanor had crafted, a perfect, proper young woman continuing a family tradition. Later that night, after guests had departed, Mary found Eleanor in her study, looking through old photo albums. "You were magnificent tonight," Mary said, sitting beside her. Eleanor nodded absently, turning pages filled with faded images. "I've been thinking about legacy lately, what we leave behind." She pointed to a photograph of herself as a young woman, standing straight-backed beside a stern-looking older woman. "My own grandmother was much like me, rigid, traditional, demanding. I resented her methods then, but they shaped me into someone who survived." Mary studied the image, seeing the clear resemblance between young Eleanor and the woman she herself had become. "Do you regret it?" Mary asked quietly. "What you did with me?" Eleanor closed the album, considering the question with unusual candor. "Regret implies a mistake was made. I don't believe that's the case." She reached for Mary's hand. "When you arrived, you were drowning in grief with no direction. I gave you structure, purpose, identity." "You gave me no choice," Mary pointed out, though without accusation. "Perhaps not initially," Eleanor acknowledged. "But every day since, you've made choices that affirmed this path. You could have left, could have rejected this life. You didn't." The observation hung between them, undeniable in its truth. Mary had embraced this transformation, finding in it something she hadn't known she needed. "I saw something in you that day in the attic," Eleanor continued. "A possibility. I simply provided the opportunity for that possibility to manifest." As Eleanor's condition progressed over the following months, Mary's role as caretaker solidified. The community recognized and respected her devotion, offering support and admiration for the granddaughter who had appeared as if from nowhere to care for Eleanor in her time of need. When Mary ran into old high school classmates who had known Dawson, not even a flicker of recognition crossed their faces. They saw only a poised young woman with brown hair and confident bearing, someone they might have noticed in school had she been there,
but certainly not the awkward, withdrawn boy who had occupied the periphery of their social circles. One autumn afternoon, as they sat in the garden watching leaves drift from the massive oak tree, Eleanor spoke with rare clarity. "When I'm gone, this house will be yours." Her voice was matter-of-fact. "I've updated my will. Everything passes to Mary Blackwood." Mary squeezed her grandmother's hand. "Let's not talk about that now." "We must." Eleanor's tone brooked no argument. "My mind fails me more each day, but I want you to know this was arranged while I was still thinking clearly." She turned to face Mary directly.
You understand what this means, don't you? Legally, officially, permanently, Dawson no longer exists. Only Mary remains.
The implications settled heavily. Sometime during Mary's transformation, Eleanor had created legal documentation establishing her new identity. How she had managed such a feat without Mary's knowledge raised questions, but Eleanor's connections in the community ran deep and decades long. "All the necessary paperwork is in the safe," Eleanor continued. "Birth certificate, social security information, everything you'll need. As far as the world is concerned, Mary Elizabeth Blackwood has always existed." "And Dawson?" Mary asked softly. "A distant memory, nothing more." Eleanor patted her hand. "You've been Mary much longer than you were ever him. This just makes official what has long been reality." As winter settled over Mapleton, Eleanor's lucid periods grew shorter. Mary managed the household with quiet efficiency, balancing work at the Historical Society with home care. Visitors often remarked on her grace under pressure, her impeccable manners, her dedication to family duty, all traits Eleanor had methodically instilled. On Christmas Eve, Eleanor experienced a particularly clear day, a gift Mary treasured. They sat before the fireplace, Eleanor in her favorite armchair, Mary on the footstool beside her. "You know," Eleanor said, watching flames dance in the hearth, "I never expected to find such satisfaction in my final years. When your father married that city woman and moved away, I thought my chance to pass on my knowledge was lost." Mary smiled. "Life has strange turns." "Indeed." Eleanor reached out to touch Mary's brown hair, now elegantly styled in loose waves. "You've exceeded every expectation, become more than I could have hoped." "Because of your guidance," Mary acknowledged. Eleanor shook her head slightly. "No, the foundation was always there. You needed direction, not renovation." Her eyes held unusual warmth. "I hope you know I've come to love you deeply, not as a project or even as a replacement, but as yourself, as Mary." The words touched something profound in Mary's heart. "I love you too, Grandma. Despite how all this began, I'm grateful for who I've become." Spring arrived with gentle persistence, coaxing flowers from the ground, even as Eleanor's condition deteriorated further. By April, hospice care had been arranged, a hospital bed installed in the downstairs study where Eleanor could look out at her beloved garden. The community rallied around Mary. Casseroles appeared on the porch. Offers of assistance came daily. The minister visited regularly. Throughout it all, Mary maintained the standards Eleanor had established. The house remained immaculate, her appearance always proper, her manners impeccable even in grief. On a surprisingly warm May morning, Eleanor opened her eyes with unexpected clarity as Mary arranged fresh flowers by her bedside. "Blue hydrangeas," she observed. "My favorite." Mary smiled. "I know, they're early this year." Eleanor studied her granddaughter with unusual focus. "You're wearing the blue dress. You always said it brought out my eyes." Mary smoothed the familiar silk fabric. "I thought you might like to see it today." For several moments, Eleanor simply watched Mary move about the room, straightening items, adjusting curtains. "I've been thinking about our beginning," she finally said. "That day in the attic. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come home early?" Mary paused, considering. "Sometimes I might have put the dress back and never mentioned it, continued being Dawson. Would that have been better?" The question contained no judgment, only genuine curiosity. Mary sat on the edge of the bed, taking Eleanor's fragile hand in hers. "Better? No. Different, certainly." She chose her words carefully. "Dawson was existing. Mary lives. There's a difference." Satisfaction crossed Eleanor's features. "Yes, exactly right." She squeezed Mary's hand with surprising strength. "Promise me something." "Anything. When I'm gone. Don't retreat. Don't hide away. The world needs more people who understand the value of structure, tradition, proper behavior. You'll carry that forward." "I promise," Mary whispered. 3 days later, Eleanor Blackwood passed peacefully in her sleep, Mary holding her hand until the end. The funeral drew nearly half the town, a testament to Eleanor's standing in the community. Mary received condolences with dignified grace, the perfect embodiment of Eleanor's teachings, even in grief. As executor of the will, Mr. Harrington, Eleanor's longtime attorney, met with Mary the following week. The contents confirmed what Eleanor had already revealed. The house, all assets, and the Blackwood family legacy now belonged to Mary Elizabeth Blackwood. "Your grandmother was quite specific about certain matters," Mr. Harrington explained, adjusting his glasses. "She updated her will regularly over the past 2 years, ensuring everything was properly arranged for you." When he handed over the final documents, Mary wasn't surprised to find a personal letter included. Eleanor's handwriting, increasingly shaky in recent months, but still recognizable, covered several pages. That evening, alone in the house that was now hers, Mary sat in Eleanor's favorite chair by the fireplace and opened the letter. "My dearest Mary, if you're reading this, I've left you to carry on alone. Don't be afraid. You're more than prepared for what lies ahead. Our beginning was unconventional, perhaps even questionable by some standards. When I found you in that attic wearing Margaret's dress, I acted on instinct rather than careful consideration. I saw an opportunity to shape someone according to values I feared were vanishing from the world. What I didn't anticipate was how naturally you would embrace this transformation, how completely Mary would eclipse Dawson. This wasn't merely about clothes or mannerisms. It was about finding your authentic self beneath years of misdirection. I've left you well provided for, with a solid legal identity that cannot be challenged. Mary Elizabeth Blackwood exists in every system, every database. My attorney has ensured this thoroughly. My final wish is that you continue building the life you've begun. Don't look back at who you were. That person served their purpose in bringing you to me. Instead, move forward as the woman you've become. With deepest affection and pride. Grandmother. Mary folded the letter carefully, tears tracking silently down her cheeks. The journey from that confused, grieving young man to the woman she now was seemed simultaneously impossible and inevitable. Rising from the chair, she caught her reflection in the antique mirror hanging over the mantel. The brown hair now reached the middle of her back, framing features that had softened through years of careful skincare routines Eleanor had insisted upon. The powder blue dress, her favorite, Eleanor's favorite, complemented her figure perfectly. No trace of Dawson remained in that reflection. No hint of the person who had reluctantly carried boxes into this house 3 years ago. In the coming weeks, Mary settled into her role as mistress of the Blackwood home. She maintained Eleanor's garden club membership, hosted the Historical Society's annual fundraiser, and continued all the traditions her grandmother had valued. When new neighbors moved in across the street, Mary was first to welcome them with a perfectly arranged basket of homemade preserves and freshly baked scones. "I'm Mary Blackwood," she introduced herself with a warm smile. "Welcome to Mapleton." No explanation needed. No qualification required. Just the simple confidence of a woman who knew exactly who she was and where she belonged. On the anniversary of Eleanor's passing, Mary visited the cemetery with a bouquet of blue hydrangeas. Placing them carefully at the headstone, she spoke softly to the grandmother who had irreversibly changed her life. "You were right, Grandma. This was always who I was meant to be." A gentle breeze rustled the trees overhead as Mary straightened, smoothing her dress with practiced hands. The gold M pendant gleamed at her throat, catching sunlight as she turned to walk the path back home. Every step measured, graceful, and completely her own.
Thanks for watching, my girlies. Be sure to check out Patreon for more.